studio. Our analysts, it's great to have you, David Makali, Peter Opondo, to discuss this issue. And of course, Kenya, and this is one of the legacies that President Mwai Kibaki is going to have left for this country. In the new constitution, I think we have probably one of the most progressive rights for women in terms of gender representation. Globally, still, we're not seeing 50-50 in many countries, even Western countries in the world. So for Kenya to have the 1/3 minority requirement, minimum gender requirement is important. But the big question, we do have female presidential aspirants heading into this race. We've seen Africa elect in of course, Liberia, Ellen Sirleaf Johnson. We have seen a woman elected in Africa. Could Kenya be next? Could we have a female president in March 2013? Let me start with you, David.
Well, I think to answer the question, Kenya is ready in terms of this country is liberalized enough to accept women in leadership positions. So to that extent, and then of course there are women who are qualified to actually hold office. If you look at the candidates who are running, there's nothing about them that says they cannot be president, except that are Kenyans, are Kenyans ready to elect them into office? Mm-hmm. This has nothing to do with their competence. It has to do with their sort of social, communal prejudices, that cultural practices and perceptions, and the other factors which make them, us to talk about a female presidential candidate this time looks improbable because of the things that were mentioned in the story by Chamara there. I mean, resources are a big issue. Capacity to just mobilize the networks that generate the political leadership that comes to the top in this country. I do not see any of these women who are contesting being capable of marshalling the support they need to run to win.
Let me come to you on this issue, Peter.
Yeah, the question we're asking is Kenya ready for to elect a female president? I think Kenya is ready to elect a female president. Will Kenyans elect a female president on March 4th, 2013? I don't think they will, for the simple reason that the three aspirants that are there at this particular moment have not been able to mobilize the numbers that one would say they have the numbers to win the election. And for the obvious reason that was said in the story and what he has said, I think we have to be realistic and look at our society and see what does it take to win the presidency. You have to get the numbers. And for you to get the numbers, you have to mobilize certain constituencies. And I don't think there's a female constituency outside there that they can mobilize. So at this particular point, we can say confidently, I think the Kenyans will not elect a female president, but Kenya is ready for a female president.
My concern, though, I think we need to look at a progressive way to achieve this women leadership at the top. And the best way, and I think if we go strictly, my thinking is that if we observe the constitution strictly and say that no more than 1/3 of any gender should dominate a particular institution, we should apply that to the presidency. And then say, therefore, that the president has to be, the president and the deputy president must be from different genders so that we can achieve that parity. If the institution of the presidency must be taken as an institution. So then these presidential candidates should be compelled, the male ones who are dominant should be compelled to have running mates who are female. That will actually square out a lot of things. If not, then my view is that they need to gradually assume, somebody needs to come to the vice presidency and rise eventually to be on the top level. Which they haven't achieved at this point.
Like what happened for Joyce Banda in Malawi.
Right. I think, David mentioned that these people are all qualified. We've got 3 aspirants right now. But I don't know if it's fair to bunch them into one group. The history of Charity Ngilu in Kenya, having run previously and been a strong political leader. Martha Karua, and she's been running this race fiercely for the past few months and looks focused on this race. Then, of course, we have the much younger Kingwa Kamenchu. Instead of bunching the women together as they're all qualified, let's actually analyze the 3 and what each of them have to offer.
I think I remember, Julie, when Kingwa Kamenchu announced that she would be a presidential aspirant for the 2013 elections. I said here that she was going to be a spectacular failure. I think I was wrong. I think she has become a joke, and she's becoming.
So is that above or below spectacular failure?
She's come lower than you're rating.
It's worse.
I think it's worse because she's comedy relief to the other guys who are campaigning, and it's good for the campaign. But I don't think she's adding any value to this campaign as an aspirant, and especially for female presidential aspirants. Look, we have Martha Karua here. For all her failings, Martha Karua is the most consistent presidential aspirant, let alone a female presidential aspirant. Maybe she might not be teaming up with any other person, but she's been so consistent, so focused. Charity Ngilu launched her presidential campaign the other day, but you and I know she has fizzled out, and she's now angling for a deal with TNA. Now, we have to give credit to Martha Karua, because I think she's been very consistent. But for Charity Ngilu and Kingwa Kamenju, I don't think.
Just before you come in, you said for all her failings, Martha Karua. So because we're analyzing the strengths and weaknesses of these people, what are her failings according to you?
The main thing you see about Martha Karua is that she's a lone ranger. She's not seeking the constituencies that would propel her to the presidency. Yes, it's true that she doesn't want the tribal alliances, the regional alliances that have been the norm in the political campaigning in this country. But the fact is, you cannot win the presidency without attracting numbers outside your core constituency. And one might ask as well, what is our core constituency? Where she comes from, for example, in central Kenya, one can arguably say that that constituency more or less has been taken by Uhuru Kenyatta, and that's a fact. So what is her core constituency? I think what she needed to do is to get a constituency behind her and then mobilize the rest of the country towards that particular cause. But that said and done, I think she's been very consistent. In fact, the most consistent presidential candidate among all of them.
In fact, quite brave to say, I'm going to break with the patterns and do things differently. But see, again, your analysis of all three of them as well.
Well, first of all, I think my friend and colleague worked with Kingwa Kamenju. She worked under me. So
you trained her.
I never told her to run for president, though. We shared some perspectives about the leadership failure in this country. And she surprised me when she jumped onto the bandwagon, and she's in there. I don't know how she's faring. I've not seen any rallies she's held. So really, I think that she should have the courage to say, I'm aiming for something, and then I'll go for the top next. And it's time for her to reorganize and resize her objective or target. Perhaps we need her in parliament. And there are opportunities which are going to arise. So I think if she shot for the top so she can get something, I think then I can commend her.
Brave to shoot for the top, but when you move for an underwear-free movement for Africa as a policy, or as an issue, when Africa has so many problems.
I think she got a little mixed up in, the idealism and the real politics of this country, which she needs to sort of aggregate. She went off. I mean, you cannot mount your campaign on the platform and underwear free Africa. I mean, what is that? Who is going to relate with you? First of all, the whole tone of underwear just takes you off the main radar of politics in this country. So I don't think she's a serious candidate, and I think I would agree that even putting her together with Charity Ngilu and Martha Karua is a bit of odd. But I think that there's nothing, we might look at Martha Karua in isolation. Charity Ngilu, I think, is a serious politician, and she has her credibility. She's a credible politician. But again, she blows hot and cold. So people have written her out. She's not a serious candidate, as it were. I said something here last time. She took offense because I say she's come out there to look for the best seater to work with. And really, that's what she's done. She's gone into TNA, as Peter has said.
You don't think Charity's running the full gauntlet?
No, she's not. She's not, and that she should stop deceiving the public. I think the person who is determined and serious, but whom I have a problem with, is Martha Karua in terms of her determination. You see, as Peter said, there is need to engage with other forces. Martha's solitary struggle and pursuit of the presidency is very alienating, very polarizing. Look at who is coming with her. I mean, it was disappointing that Mungatana, who had been seen as her closer ally and whom she had quit government with, has also exited, meaning there's something that's not right. And I asked Martha Karua once here whether she's willing to enter into any coalition, and she said, never, see me on the ballot. You see, it's okay to have determination, but you also must take stock of the circumstances. And I think that she would, and there have been entreaties to her to join a coalition to build with others. She's totally unwilling. If you look at the voting patterns of women, let me just touch that. Martha Karua attracts women voters. Few men are interested in her, if you look at the opinion polls. If you look at, okay, let me just sketch the rest. Raila Odinga attracts more men than women supporters. Uhuru Kenyatta attracts more women than male supporters. Musalia Mudavadi attracts more male than female supporters. If you look at all that, you can almost tell where the women are going to vote in this poll.
That's fascinating, but I also don't think it's right for women to vote for women for the sake of voting for women.
Of course.
Or for men to do, I mean, we all want people who are qualified, and it should be based on meritocracy. We're saying, you know, these women have a proven track record, at least two of them in politics, but how serious is one of them, are you saying? And you're saying the other is not going into coalitions, and that could be her undoing. Gentlemen, the final point, because we've got to wind up. It is going to cost this country a lot of money to have nominated women in positions because we fail to meet the minimum requirement. And yet we have seen in many parts of this country that women have been elected. We don't have enough in the House, but certainly we do have a few women MPs from areas that perhaps would not be traditionally thought of as places that would elect women in. Do you have a word to the country about the gender issue and the importance for us to have some way of meeting that minimum requirement so it doesn't cost the country an enormous amount of money, as the Commission on Revenue Allocation would say?
I think the fact is Kenyans are ready for female leaders, for women leaders. That's a fact. You see, you look at let's say the Rift Valley region, the North Rift region, which has the highest number of members of parliament, female elected in the current parliament, the outgoing parliament. The fact is Kenyans can elect women. So it's up to the political parties to ensure that they give more women a chance, and also for women to offer themselves to go and fight it out there and seek these positions, because you cannot be given positions on a silver platter. You cannot just be plucked from wherever you are and told come and run. You see,
so go for it, go head to head with the others.
And I think that's why you have to applaud what Martha Karua is doing, what King Wakamenchu is doing, what Charity Ngeli has done. You see, when they come out there and offer themselves, people are able to look at them from a different perspective. And I think what is important is that we must have enough women coming out to seek elective positions, and therefore whatever gap we will have, we can see how to fill it.
David?
Well, while we wait for the Supreme Court to make a finding on whether these one-third gender representation in Parliament is to be achieved in this election, I am almost totally, violently opposed to the idea of people being nominated to Parliament. I think it creates a bad precedent. People are going to position themselves, attempt to run, not because they're serious, but they want to show face so that they can be considered for nomination. I think that the law needs to be set that, okay, we need to have affirmative action. Let's create, instead of one woman representative, let's make it two, so that we can actually, initially, without having to go to nominations, have enough numbers of women in the House to cater for that. Then the law can be changed after 5 years if we see that there's a good number of them in political office, to reduce that to one, back to...
But do you want to come in as a women's representative or as a leader for all? And I think...
The Constitution has given us opportunity for affirmative action, and it's a recognition that really women are not able to achieve these factors that are too heavy against them. So we can give them 10 years, a period within which we can give them affirmative action. After that, we can phase out and say now it's mundo homondo.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's clear it's not an easy race to run, but women must stand up and run alongside their male counterparts. If you believe that you have the qualities necessary, you can see the presidential aspirants going for it. Stand up and run, go for it. And perhaps we need to challenge some of the civil society organizations. What education is going on out there? How can women mobilize? Because it will cost Kenya a lot if we don't have qualified women we can elect into office, as opposed to putting women into nominated positions. So keep your thoughts coming in on this issue, though. 2442 is the SMS number. And just a final point, very interesting, when we asked the question about Martha Karua the last time, over 80% of people said they would vote for her. Now when we say, can Kenya elect a woman president, the numbers shift.
But you see, there's a misunderstanding there. When you asked whether Kenya is ready for a female president, I think Kenya is ready. When you ask whether Kenya will elect a female president, that's where
whether they can vote for a female president. Then the fact has changed.
It's going from just answering a poll question to commitment. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll see you back in our news studio in just a short while. Stay with Sunday Live.